What? No way. It can't be. Just as I was about to marry my fiancée, I stumbled upon a shocking truth. Until then, I had lived as part of a normal family, but on the family register, it stated I was adopted. I wanted to ask what this was about, but at the same time, I was scared to know the truth, so I hesitated for a few days. However, my fiancée, who was suffering from morning sickness during her pregnancy. Whether you ask or not, your parents are still your parents, right? She said. Even after their biological child, who was 15 years younger than me, was born, my parents never neglected me. They raised me with care. Summoning up the courage, I took the family register and asked my parents about it. My name is David. I'm 23 years old. To help my parents in the future, I work for a real estate company. My parents are what you might call landowners, managing various properties. They've inherited land over generations, running apartments, parking lots, and such, making us quite wealthy. However, when my dad was young, they were just landowners living in poverty. Perhaps because of this, or maybe despite it, my dad's motto was simplicity and frugality. We live in a modest single-family home, and though the yard is fairly large, most of it is used for a vegetable garden. Of course, we don't have a housekeeper. Meals are homemade by my mother, and we never had fancy multi-course dinners like on TV. Instead, they spared no expense on my education. They let me try everything I was interested in from a young age and took me on trips during school breaks, both domestically and abroad. For the experience. One memorable trip was to Spain when I was in 3rd grade. My dad chose it because of its many historical buildings. We also visited France, Germany, Canada, Brazil, and many other places. At each destination, my parents would explain the history and culture to me in an easy-to-understand way. I think they studied history and culture just to teach me. Even domestic trips were mostly educational, and we rarely went to famous theme parks or amusement facilities. We only went to fun places on my birthday trips, and I envied classmates who had annual passes and went often. That said, the trips were not unenjoyable. I liked hearing my parents talk about history and culture and tasting various cuisines. However, I remember not liking British food. Even now, I can't eat haggis, a dish made from sheep's organs. Back then, we all wanted to return to Japan quickly, a sentiment we still laugh about. When I became a middle schooler, I got busy with club activities and studies, and we rarely traveled abroad. My parents encouraged me to take the middle school entrance exam to make future exams easier, but I attended public middle school instead. I simply didn't want to part with my elementary school friends, but in middle school, everyone made new friends, and some of us drifted apart. Looking back, I sometimes regret not taking the entrance exam as my parents suggested. Because of this, I took high school entrance exams seriously, balancing study and club activities, leading to very busy days. My parents must have had busy days keeping up with me, too. I didn't attend any cram schools for studying. My parents, both graduates of a prestigious national university, tutored me themselves. During my club matches, my mom participated in parent activities, and my dad always came to cheer me on. Our routine changed slightly just before I entered my 3rd year of middle school. I thought my mom wasn't feeling well lately, but it turned out she was pregnant. I was told I'd have a brother or sister by next Christmas. I always wanted siblings, so I was thrilled. However, this became a reason for teasing at school. My mom was 42 years old. A late pregnancy. I understood from my dad how challenging late pregnancies could be. But it wasn't something I could explain to all my classmates. By the 2nd year of middle school, everyone knew how pregnancy happened. Being teased for having done those things because my mom got pregnant at 42 was embarrassing. Excited about having a sibling, I ended up in a big fight with a classmate who teased me, leading to a call for my parents. My dad came to pick me up from school. He asked me why I fought, but I stubbornly refused to answer. The other boy also refused to explain when his mom asked him. He probably knew his comments were wrong, but I had a different reason. I thought if my parents knew the reason, they would blame themselves. But no matter how much we kept quiet, the truth eventually came out. The homeroom teacher, informed by students who witnessed the incident, explained everything. The teacher apologized to my dad, and the other boy's mom made him bow his head forcefully. In the car on the way home, I asked my dad, who was driving, not to tell my mother. He promised he wouldn't and said, Thank you for getting angry for your mother's sake. However, he also scolded me all the way home, saying that even if it was for mom, fighting was not acceptable. Afterwards, the homeroom teacher used class time to explain pregnancy and childbirth in detail, and the boy apologized to me. Although I initially didn't intend to forgive him, seeing how genuinely sorry he looked, I accepted his apology. My sister was born on Christmas of my third year in middle school. My mom, who was preparing for Christmas Eve with the family, went into labor. She was worried about the half-prepared meal, but that was not the priority. I accompanied her in the car driven by my dad. My mom's grip, as she endured the pain, was unbelievably strong for someone usually so gentle. We arrived at the hospital around 6 p.m. on December 24th. 12 hours later, my sister was born. I was allowed to see my newborn sister, and tears naturally welled up as I saw her tiny, clenched hand. "You've become a big brother, David," my mother, with her hair all messy and looking exhausted, said to me. Thus, I became a doting older brother to my newborn sister, named Chloe. Whenever I heard Chloe cry, I would rush to her, even if I was studying for exams. If my mom wanted to take Chloe shopping, I insisted she leave Chloe at home, saying there were too many germs outside. My dad, exasperated with me. "You are a high school applicant, so focus on yourself rather than on Chloe," he warned. As the exams drew closer, my parents finally banned me from interacting with Chloe because of my overprotectiveness. I protested that banning me from seeing Chloe stressed me out and made it hard to concentrate, but they didn't budge. When I argued, "What if I fail my exams because of stress?" my dad retorted, "So, you're planning to blame Chloe if you fail?" I had no comeback for that. If I did fail, my parents would surely say it was because I spent too much time doting on Chloe. Thinking this way, I studied desperately for the remaining month before the exam. Though I was in a doting brother phase, I had been studying steadily since the first year of middle school. Having kept my grades at the top, I easily passed my desired high school entrance exam. Easily. Though academically it wasn't a problem, saying it was easy in terms of my personal life is debatable. After finishing the exams and entering spring break, I didn't want to leave Chloe's side for a single day. During that spring break, the classmate who used to tease me also came to see Chloe, and he was completely smitten by her cuteness. I started attending the prestigious high school affiliated with my desired university, so I couldn't spend all my time with Chloe anymore. Naturally, I transitioned from being a doting brother to a regular brother. However, I was still frustrated when people called me a doting brother. What's wrong with a brother being kind to his sister? Before my first summer vacation in high school, I went for a part-time job interview. I wasn't dissatisfied with my allowance, but my dad said it would be good to work for the experience. "How much money can you earn from working? How will you spend that money? Knowing this alone will be a good experience," my dad said. So, I went for an interview at a nearby bento shop. I suspected my parents were worried about me being too attached to Chloe. This was my first time writing a resume, and I didn't have much to write. I started from my kindergarten days, and as I recalled my past, I felt a slight sense of unease. I remembered attending kindergarten, but I also vaguely recalled going to a place like a daycare. My parents had always told me I attended kindergarten, and there were photos of me in uniform. However, I had faint memories of being in a different place with many children. Didn't I attend kindergarten? I asked my dad, who was reviewing my resume. He gave me a puzzled look, wondering why I was asking such a question now. Maybe I have memories from a past life. I joked, and he gave me a skeptical look. It seemed the only way to reconcile my faint memories with what my parents told me was to believe in past life memories. My dad said it was likely a mix of dreams and things seen on TV, but I preferred the past life theory. It was more romantic that way. I'm not a geek, but believing in past lives and alternate worlds is more exciting. Though my dad was exasperated, I chose to think that way. I was hired after my interview at the bento shop. At my first part-time job, there were 3 employees and 5 part-timers, including the manager, Sam. There were 3 high schoolers and 2 college students among the part-timers. I developed a crush on one of my fellow part-timers, Emma. Emma started working there when she entered high school to save money for college. At first, I thought she just came from a less privileged family. She always hurried home after the shop closed at 9 p.m., finishing closing tasks in 30 minutes. We didn't have many opportunities to talk except during shared breaks. I later learned from conversations between Sam and Emma that she lived in a foster home. Emma rushed home because the home had a curfew. Her parents had died in an accident when she was in elementary school, and with no relatives to take her in, she ended up in foster care. Being taken in by the facility, Emma must have faced some prejudice. However, Emma was always cheerful, as if nothing had ever been tough. I was drawn to her dedication to working hard every day just to pursue her studies in college. Before the summer vacation of my second year in high school, I confessed my feelings and we started dating. Initially, Emma was reluctant to date because she didn't have parents and lived in a foster home. However, it was Emma and I who were dating, and nothing else mattered. Even if I was concerned about Emma's background, I wanted to date her knowing it, so it shouldn't be an issue. Aren't you viewing yourself the same way those who look at you with prejudice for being raised in a foster home do? Emma was at a loss for words. I wasn't trying to blame her, but I wanted her to have more confidence. Even without parents and being raised in a foster home, Emma was a hardworking and impressive young woman. That's why I fell for her. Emma said if I didn't mind her being busy with work and studies, she would date me. She worked 5 days a week, so I knew she was busy. Even so, I wanted to spend as much time with her as possible. Our dates were mostly study sessions at the library. Coincidentally, we both aimed for the same university. But Emma's mock exam results showed a B grade. Thanks to the educational focus from my parents since I was young, I had an A grade. My parents, who graduated from a prestigious national university, tutored me, so I had an A grade. Emma, without any tutoring and studying alone for the entrance exam, had a B grade. It was clear she was putting in a lot of effort. This clearly showed how strongly Emma wanted to get into university. Her strong desire to get into university made me reflect on my own casual approach to higher education and inspired me to think seriously about my future. Thanks to Emma, I started to take my future seriously. Emma and I worked hard together and applied to the same department at the same university. It was the law department of the most prestigious university in the country. Emma wanted to protect victims of accidents and crimes. I aimed to support my parents' real estate business. Despite different motivations, we both passed. When I confirmed my number on the board, I called my parents. My parents were delighted, and even Chloe, who had just turned 3 and started speaking, congratulated me. Big bro, congrats. Emma also contacted the foster home and received congratulatory messages. She had a delighted smile on her face while holding the phone to her ear. Thus, Emma and I became university students. Emma continued to live at the foster home even after entering university. While many foster homes require residents to leave after high school graduation, the facility where Emma lives allows high school graduates to stay until they turn 20. University students could stay until they graduated. This meant that high school graduates had a 2-year grace period to save for independent living, while university students had to save during their studies. Emma, determined to become independent, continued to work part-time and study diligently. Despite her busy schedule, she never complained. Some of her foster home peers had to work immediately after high school to support their parents, unable to attend university. Compared to them, she felt fortunate to pursue higher education. Emma taught me that one's outlook could transform misfortune into happiness, and I deeply respected her for that. During our university years, there were several times when we faced the threat of breaking up. The main issue was the mismatch in our schedules. Emma's part-time job made it hard for us to find time together. Because of that, we often argued over trivial things, and the topic of breaking up came up many times. However, we managed to stay together and graduated from university. A few months before graduation. After graduation, why don't you live with us? I suggested to Emma that she live with us. Emma had secured a job at a paralegal office. I had also secured a job at a real estate company. However, Emma's goal was to become a lawyer, and she needed to continue studying while working. I thought if she lived with my family, Emma wouldn't need to worry about living expenses. Emma had said she couldn't live in a house with my family, but I had already discussed the situation with my parents and gotten their approval. The rest was up to Emma. She had visited my house several times and knew my parents and Chloe. My parents liked Emma, appreciating her hard work, and Chloe was fond of her too, so there shouldn't be any problems. Even so, I understood her hesitation about living at her boyfriend's family home. So, I decided to tell Emma my resolve. "Will you marry me?" It was a simple proposal. I had planned to say something more touching or memorable, but in my nervousness, that was all I could manage. Emma accepted my proposal, and it was decided she would live with us after graduating from university. Some might think it premature for a university student to talk about marriage, but I couldn't imagine anyone else as my future wife. Even though I might meet many women in the future, I couldn't imagine wanting to marry anyone more than Emma. For some reason, I felt it was fate. I had been to mixers where I met beautiful and cute women, but none of them made me want to see them again. I couldn't help but compare them to Emma and only saw their flaws. This was also a cause of arguments between Emma and me. Despite her busy schedule, Emma took the initiative in doing household chores when she started living with us after graduation. My parents and I told her to use that time for studying, but she insisted it was no problem since she was used to it from the foster home. However, sometime after we started living together, Emma fell ill. We all thought she had overexerted herself. But in reality, it was something else. Emma was pregnant. Even though we had planned to get married and register our marriage in a few months, Emma was still in the middle of her dream. We had been careful enough, but still. "I'm sorry." I apologized, thinking I had hindered her dreams, but Emma frowned. She said, "Aren't you happy?" I wasn't unhappy, but honestly, I felt more apologetic for disrupting her plans. Seeing my confusion, Emma said, "I can take the preliminary exam anytime, it's okay. Even if you graduate from the law department, you can't become a lawyer without going to graduate school. To become a lawyer, no matter how brilliant you are, you either have to go to graduate school or pass the preliminary exam." Emma, who had to leave the foster home upon graduation, had planned to take the preliminary exam instead of going to grad school. Yet she smiled, saying she was happy about starting a family. My parents also said having a child is a miracle and supported us. Thus, we decided to get married, but I discovered a shocking truth. My registered domicile was at my dad's family home in a neighboring city. To submit the marriage registration, we needed identification documents and a family register. When I saw the family register for the first time, I was shocked. What? No way. It can't be. The family register stated that I was adopted. For a few days, I was torn between wanting to know the truth and fearing it, unable to ask my parents. But as Emma struggled with morning sickness, she said, "Whether you ask or not, your parents are still your parents, right?" Even after their biological child, Chloe, was born, my parents never neglected me. They had always raised me with care. I gathered my courage and, holding the family register, asked my parents, "Can you explain this to me?" I held the family register in my hand and asked my parents to explain the situation. Apparently, my parents, who had the same legal domicile in the same city, didn't know they needed the family register for the marriage process. They were quite surprised that I had the family register. "I'm sorry. We planned to tell you when you turned 20, but we never got around to it." My dad lowered his head apologetically. Then he explained everything. My dad, Michael, and my mother, Sarah, got married when they were 27. Despite not using contraception, they saw no signs of pregnancy even after 2 years. Following the wishes of my late grandparents, they both underwent fertility tests. It turned out that my mother was infertile. Financially well off, my parents pursued fertility treatments, but after 5 years, they still couldn't conceive. When my granddad, who was particular about bloodlines, passed away, they decided to stop the treatments. The treatments had taken a toll on my mother's health and emotional stability. Despite this, she endured it to meet my grandparents' expectations. My dad, unable to watch her suffer, suggested adoption. When my parents visited the foster home where I was, they felt it was fate. I had just turned 4 at the time. I was been placed in an infant home immediately after birth and then moved to a foster home. My name is David, and my dad's name is Michael. They were intrigued by the shared character in our names and spoke to me. Despite being very shy and only opening up to people at the foster home, I smiled at them. Feeling it was destiny that a shy child like me would smile at them, they decided to start the adoption process immediately. My biological dad was unknown, and my biological mother was 16 when she gave birth to me. Since I was only 4, a special adoption could have registered me as their biological child. However, my biological mother had become unreachable, making this impossible. Special adoption requires the consent of both biological parents. My parents tried to locate my biological parents but couldn't. So, I was adopted into their family. To my parents, who longed for a child, I was as good as their biological son. Even after the miraculous birth of Chloe, they couldn't imagine neglecting the son they had raised for over 10 years. I realized that because my parents had difficulty having children, they were able to accept Emma's pregnancy so wholeheartedly. Hearing this, I felt my parents' love more deeply than ever. When Chloe was born, I was 15. It was just before I graduated from middle school. They could have made me independent after middle school since I had completed compulsory education. For the sake of appearances, they could have supported me until high school and then left me on my own. But instead, they continued to love and support me. At that moment, I understood the unease I felt when writing my first resume. What I thought was a daycare was actually the foster home. Though my dad pretended not to know, he must have been anxious inside. I realized they kept it a secret for my sake. It was shortly after Chloe was born, and I was doting on her. If I had known then that I wasn't her biological brother, it would have been a huge shock to me. I might have become bitter, thinking I was unnecessary now that they had a biological child. Understanding my parents' profound love, tears streamed down my face. Thank you. It wasn't something I had thought out. A spontaneous expression of gratitude slipped from my lips. What a time to say that. With tears in his eyes, my dad chuckled, and I laughed along with him. I was certain that my parents would continue to love me as they always had. Our life would go on as usual. A few months later, Emma and I had our wedding. My family, along with several teachers from the facility where Emma grew up, attended the ceremony. Chloe served as the ring bearer, and the ceremony was filled with joy. College classmates and workplace supervisors. With so many people celebrating us, we are truly happy. We aim to make our wedding a joyous and fun occasion. We decided against the traditional emotional letter to our parents. Not everyone at the wedding knew that Emma was raised in a facility. And we saw no need to highlight that. Additionally, it would have seemed odd if I alone expressed gratitude to my parents, so we chose not to include a thank you letter. Instead, I had another plan. A week after the wedding, I suggested to my family that we visit the facility where Emma grew up. In fact, the facility where my parents adopted me was the same one Emma grew up in. Travis, the director who attended our wedding, was delighted that Emma and I, who had both been at the facility, were getting married. So, I had asked Travis for a favor. Emma, unaware of the plan, asked what we were going there for, and I replied, "I want to see where I lived when I was little." That was true, but there was another reason. We parked the car and headed to the facility's playground. Huh? Why aren't there any kids playing? Emma looked puzzled. It was unusual for no children to be playing in the yard on a Sunday at this time. Despite her curiosity, I led Emma to the multi-purpose hall overlooking the playground. "Congratulations on your wedding, Emma!" The children shouted, and party poppers went off. Emma was taken aback. I had planned a small wedding ceremony at the facility. It wasn't as grand as the one at the venue, but with the help of the facility's family, we prepared a handmade wedding ceremony. For the past week, I had been visiting the facility with my parents to prepare. Emma was led inside by the small children holding his hands. Travis said, "Congratulations," and handed him the bouquet. Tears welled up in her eyes. Emma had wanted to invite all the teachers to the wedding, but it was impossible to leave the children alone at the facility. So only a few could attend. I had suggested inviting the children to the wedding, but Emma declined, thinking it would be too much. While understandable, I knew that both the teachers and the children were like family to Emma. It was natural for her to want her family to celebrate with her, and I was sure they wanted to celebrate her as well. So, I asked Travis if we could have a celebration party at the facility. He said that the staff and children would love to help and celebrate. Though it might not have been a full-fledged wedding, we were celebrated by the children and staff. After the performances by the children and staff, I encouraged everyone to head to the dining hall. As a thank you, I had arranged for a catered lunch. The children, seeing the catered food for the first time, ran towards it with shining eyes, only to be scolded by the staff. Looks like they're more excited about the food than my celebration, Emma said, smiling as she watched the children. A high school senior preparing for exams approached Emma and said, "Emma, you've given us hope." Thank you. Emma, who grew up in a foster home, graduated from university and now has a happy marriage. This fact has shown the children, who may have given up on their futures, that they too can dream about their own futures. The child who spoke to Emma had also decided to go to university after seeing Emma's example. With tears in her eyes, Emma said, "Balancing work and studies is tough, so you have to work hard," showing her sisterly side. Watching this, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Emma glared at me, displeased, wondering why I was laughing. "Isn't it hard to be convincing when you're teary-eyed?" I said, making Emma pout and walk towards the children. Chloe was also enjoying the catered food with the other kids. I turned to my parents, who were standing behind me. "So, I was here too." "Yes, it feels nostalgic," my dad said, and my mother smiled nostalgically. After my parents adopted me, Emma came to the facility. Although Emma and I never lived there together, we were now family. It might sound corny, but I felt that our meeting was destiny. Later on, Emma safely gave birth to our child. She worked up until the last possible moment to avoid inconveniencing her job, so I was worried about her health. But she gave birth to a healthy baby girl. Chloe was excited to become a big sister. But when I told her, "You're going to be an aunt, not a big sister," she pouted, insisting she wasn't an aunt. Well, I had no intention of making her call herself an aunt. But I wanted her to understand that she wouldn't be a sibling since she was already 9 years old. Chloe became a doting aunt, adoring her newborn niece. "My parents. Looks just like someone we know," they said, giving me a slightly exasperated look. Indeed, I was much the same when Chloe was born. Knowing this, Emma laughed, and I felt a bit embarrassed. "Chloe is just like her big brother," Emma said, almost making me tear up. "Chloe and I aren't related by blood. Yet being told we were similar made me very happy." It felt like Emma was saying that family ties aren't just about blood relations. Emma returned to work shortly after giving birth and passed the preliminary exam that year. It was a test that took about 6 months. Our entire family supported Emma, but balancing childcare and studying must have been extremely challenging. Sometimes she complained about being sleep deprived, but Emma was always smiling. Emma said she tried to smile even more when things were tough. "Making a sad face only makes things harder," she said with a smile, making me admire her even more. Holding our granddaughter, my mother said, "It looks like you'll be under her thumb," laughing. I'm perfectly fine with that. After all, I believe there is no one as hardworking, cheerful, and wonderful as Emma. I'm home. Chloe rushed into the living room after returning from school, saying, "Lisa, I'm your big sister," to our daughter in my mother's arms. It's amusing to see Chloe's determination to make sure she isn't called an aunt, insisting every day that she's a big sister. When my mother told her to wash her hands first, Chloe hurried off to wash them. "Lisa. That's our daughter's name. Emma, you've given us hope." That was when the name came to me. Chloe is the hope of our family. Lisa is the dream of our family. These two little ones will always remain the dream and hope of our family.